On the offensive side of things did get a little spicy. As we said, Bill O'Brien his voice was heard. He does not like it when things don't go the way he wants. He runs a tight ship. I think, and I know you didn't, I know you missed the first one, but I know you probably, took in a lot of what was being said and what was being written. The highlight of number one OTA was when we talked to Mac Jones and he used the word normal to describe what had gone on. And that kind of said a lot, and it cut pretty deep to the previous regime of coaches. One of whom is still parading around there. I'm not really sure doing what, but
also another very loud voice on the field. You hear Bill O'Brien and you hear Joe Judge.
Judge all the time. But boy, you can tell, again, even in small little things like this, there is a way, there is a thing you do, there are specifics, and how they want things done. And even the smallest little degree off is going to be like, what are you guys effing doing? Yeah. There's an expectation. There is teaching, there is coaching, there is a clear system in place. You can see it. It runs much more like clockwork than what we saw last year. I cannot describe to you how head scratching it was for so many people. Like, wait, this isn't normal, right? You're like, this is weird and messy, and who's doing what? It was a really odd vibe. You don't have that at all. You hear that voice. It is very clear who's running the ship here.
CLNS Media's Patriots coverage is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win.
And like you said, it is a tight ship, and that's what the Patriots want to run. That's the standard that Bill Belichick sets. And obviously, it's easy to dog Matt Patricia, but he literally did not have the resources, the knowledge, anything you want to list to perform his job optimally. Robert Kraft said as much. Belichick said he was going to take responsibility before the season, and it fell to him afterwards. So I always try to give the disclaimer. I know it's easy to pile on Judge, but he was set up to fail. But Bill O'Brien, he gives that Belichick type feeling on the offensive side of the ball, where players, yes, he's a hard coach. He really lit into Kayshon Boutte because Boutte might have lined up in the wrong spot, and he was not happy about it. Basically, let him know that college stuff's not going to fly at the NFL level.
Yeah, not just a college, your crappy college,
Right. So it that standard, like you said, it's not going to fly, and that's what you want. You want that guy who's going to keep them in line because he has a track record of success. It's not like Matt Patricia, where he's telling Mac Jones what to do, and Mac Jones is saying, I can literally do this job better than you can, and I'm outsourcing. It's hard to get your point across when the players don't respect you and your resume. And Bill O'Brien obviously not only brings that, but brings his own legitimacy as someone who, like you said, keeps people accountable, holds them in line, all the important things that, there wasn't last. And I really wish I was at last year's practice so I could see the before and after, because everything that I was hearing was, this is so much different. Last year was worse than you could probably imagine. But it's really nice to see a well-oiled machine, even though we didn't see it firing on all cylinders.
It's like anything. I almost say it's analogous to okay, I can read a manual for something that I bought and figure out okay, how do you do this and that? And that's kind of what I felt like that happened with the offense. I can get us started, but if one thing goes wrong, I have no idea how to fix it, and that's how they were, is they didn't know enough and have enough of attention to detail to be able to kind of figure out why it wasn't working or what they needed to do different. It was just kind of like a sloppy install of a system that they didn't fully comprehend to begin with, that wasn't working, and then they didn't know how to make it work. They didn't know how to teach people to do what needed to be done. There was really no actual control. It almost felt like they were, hold on, let me run back and let me read my, offensive, handbook and come back out and maybe I have some answers for you. Whereas someone like Bill O'Brien, this is just what he does, no, you gotta be you got to be about a foot closer to the second receiver rather than the quarterback on this one, and that's where you line up. And you got to the attention to detail is a totally different thing. This is why this works. This is what all of you need to be doing. It's completely different. Just watching and listening and coaching. To an untrained eye, you watch them do the same thing 5 times. He has a different comment every single time, and each one is just slightly different and nuanced about what needed to be done by each person at each different time. So, it's different. And there was none of that last year. It was just, you'd watch play after play after play blow up, and people just be like, I don't know why that's happening. You'd watch the offense get its ass kicked day in, day out by the defense. And it was odd.
And my favorite thing about O'Brien, especially after what happened last season, where they were throwing stuff at the wall and nothing stuck, things seemed complicated because there was just so much confusion and lack of cohesion. O'Brien's entire thing is keeping it simple, not outsmarting yourself. He said in a coaching clinic with like Haas-Chuk, for example, like if we have a play that you can't stop, we're gonna keep running it. Why would we not? We're not gonna outsmart ourselves and call something when we have a strategy that's working. And when you have that level of simplicity and everybody being on the same page because their jobs are made relatively simple, that's where you see innovation. That's where you see growth, because guys are comfortable in their roles and they know what they have to do. And that's when they say, okay, well, this is what we do. Now we build on it. Like you see it with all the best Belichick defenses, where they start out the season, it's like all they're doing is playing cover 3, cover 1. If it's a team that's kind of new to each other. And then you see as the season goes on, if there's a lot of veterans who catch on quickly, you start seeing a lot more disguises, trickier and more exotic blitz packages, things like that, because players understand the fundamentals so well, it's easier for them to build on top of that because everything else makes sense. And you're really just adding on top of, like I said, that solid foundation. So it's really exciting seeing O'Brien just keep this machine running smoothly and not just making it this cluster of like, what is going on and why are we doing this?
Yeah. And you see it. I mean, again, I hate using coaches as an excuse, because ultimately it's on the players. Football is just one of those games, Taylor, where there's just too much to not have everything absolutely buttoned down and locked down. There's so much execution, and so much of it has to be coached properly, or else you really don't have a chance. It does feel like they didn't fully have a chance, and I think they knew it, and they knew it early. You saw Mac go last year in camp from early on, Belichick saying he looks great, he's in command, he's this and that, to pouting, sagging his shoulders, seeing ghosts, just making poor decisions, inaccurate, all sorts of awful things in training camp, and it's just like, and you could tell he just didn't trust it. And this year, again, it's just a couple of OTA practices. He looks bouncy, he's engaged. He's clearly like peppy. Again, what does this translate to? I don't know, but the look of him is different than it was after a couple of weeks of practices, or even a week's worth of training camp last year, when it was like, oh man, we're effed right now. So, and again, for whatever it's worth, in whatever competitive reps they've had in the first 2 days of OTA, he has something like a 96% completion percentage. And again, they're not doing anything too challenging.
And I want to quickly acknowledge a great comment in the chat from Josh Peter about the RPOs and like the play action, because when you think about the Matt Patricia offense, it was running these downfield concepts that were extremely predictable, weren't disguised by formation or anything like that. And then Mac Jones is taking these long drops with bad protection and he's getting killed. And then it devolved into what we saw towards the end of the season, where it was just constantly quick hitters. And defenses didn't even respect them. Now the RPO, that's where you're able to put defenses in conflict and make it easier on the quarterback and the running back in the offensive line. Play action, specifically Bill O'Brien's play action scheme, it's very big on protection. Like, he's not going to be putting Mac Jones in positions where he's holding the ball if he doesn't need to. So you're going to be seeing play action where they have 7 people in protection and there's only 2 people running routes. That's what he did a lot with the Texans. And that's just something to make sure that Mac has the time to actually make these throws because of the influence of these designs that Bill O'Brien has, where he does such a great job making the run fakes look like actual runs because he's using motion. He's pulling a guard. Everybody's moving one direction and there's displacement. Then the quarterback either bootlegs or drops back and throws it over their heads because the linebackers are on the other side of the field. Like, there's so many. And again, Josh Peter, great point. a lot of these elements that Bill O'Brien is going to bring, that like the Patriots, they had RPOs last season, but they were all bubble screens and no one fears those. Their play action scheme was barely there, and then even further limited by some great reporting from Andrew Callahan revealed that they didn't really have the right play action scheme installed because they used so much time before the season trying to implement an outside zone
on
scheme
that outside zone run, which just
they didn't know how to coach. When you look at it, they didn't know how to coach it. The players didn't know how to execute it, and they didn't really have the players to execute it, I think, at an optimal level for it to be the base of your offense. So it kind of gutted them, and they only had a handful of play actions that they could even install every week. So they started so far behind the 8 ball, and now you're saying Bill O'Brien's actually got them. Mac is happy because he probably understands what he's doing. He knows his job, and he's confident that they're actually going to be able to execute because he's being put in more advantageous situations rather than not even starting from like the baseline, but starting well below and then trying to compensate and just make them competitive.
CLNS Media's Patriots coverage is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win.